recording. All right. So today you have a couple things to do. One is that population activity that we started last week. And the population activity, again, you're going to go and search on Google and find out what kind of things are happening. For instance, one of your classmates was looking at Afghanistan, and there was a big dip in 1984. For people who know history, they'd know why that dip was happening. She said it was due to malnutrition. Well, the issue is that it's actually due to the Soviet-Afghan war. So making sure that you clarify where the dips are coming from. And in terms of a historical event, generally if there's a big dip and it goes down like for a year and then it goes back up, it might be a war. Please do check that. Okay. Let's see. And then you also have the peer review sheet due. So the peer review sheet. This is to talk about, this is all anonymous, but what it gives me information about is if there's one person in your group, let's say one person in your group is doing the introduction. You guys waited and everyone else in the group had gotten their parts done, but the intro person just really slacked. You had to write something up for them, etc. Then tell me that. In the peer review sheet, you would give that person, for completing their work and quality of their work, give them a low number, say that they didn't communicate with you. And what this helps me with is I'm able to look at that and say, okay, I see that this part, and this part were all really well done, but it's really bad in the introduction. And so, yes, Jesse, I saw it and then I got buried under a bunch of stuff, so I'll get back to you on that. So anyways, the concept here is, again, what you're doing is you're trying to explain here who is pulling their weight and who's not. One of the main goals with doing this is to make sure that anyone who is doing poorly and pulling the group down actually doesn't pull the group grade down. Instead, they pulled their grade down. So if I know that you guys have been working really hard, but the person who was working on this just hasn't been doing anything, then that gives me information. I'm able to go and help you by not including that part in your grade and only grading down the person who did that part. They will be pulled up by your grades, but I won't tell you if I'm doing this. I do take them into consideration. I posted a paper from last semester. Last semester, the paper that you see, I took out all the names for anonymity, but a couple of the people didn't get along in that one. And one person didn't pull their weight, and that person did the methods. I was told by every other person in the group were upset that he did the methods and did them badly. I indicated to him that since the methods were done poorly, that's why he got a poorer grade. I did not tell the other people that I gave him a lower grade. I just take things into account. I may not mark someone down due to your comments. I may not mark someone up due to your comments. But if there's a preponderance of evidence that this person's not pulling their weight, then perhaps they would get a slightly lower grade than their group mates. Okay, this helps it so that I don't punish people who are doing the work and are struggling with a slacking group mate, and I don't and I give anyone who's not working hard on it the grade they deserve instead of the grade that other people are earning for them. Okay, and if everyone worked really well together, or if everyone in your group is saying, wow, he was the leader, this person was so great, he helped everybody and contributed so much, that person might get a boost. I wouldn't tell everyone else that they gave you a boost, but I may give a boost to the person who works really well with everyone. So again, I'm using this as information to make sure that I'm giving the correct grade. I'd also like to share something with you guys. I know not everyone's in class right now, but I've had a couple people asking me about other classes that I teach on campus. Either you want to avoid me or you'd like to have me as a professor again. And while I'm flattered, I'm not teaching next semester. And I will be still... I appreciate the love, but I will be still a professor. But I have a small problem. I'm not allowed to teach basically when I'm about to have a baby. I've kept it secret from everyone. I just entered my 3rd trimester. No one's seen me stand up. Oh, thank you all. I was pregnant when I started teaching you, and she's just got bigger. So it'll be my 2nd kid. We were just talking about population ecology last class, and population ecology indicates that the average number of people who have the average number of babies per woman in the United States is 2. Well, that's true. I am in the average now. So anyways, I'm glad everyone appreciates that, but I will be back next fall and late in the semester. My 4-year-old is pretty set on one of the names that we were talking about. We are leaning towards it, but we're not telling anyone the name yet because maybe we'll change our minds. I don't want anyone to get attached to the name. Anyways, so it's a little girl, and so we're very happy, but I can't teach next semester. I'm due mid-February, and that would be like 3 weeks into the semester, so not really ideal. Okay. Anyways, I have enjoyed teaching you guys, even though I have barely seen your faces. Oh yeah, that's right, Leroy. You had she was my office mate, Tracy, Dr. Ring. So Professor Ring was my office mate, and she got pregnant while I was trying to get pregnant. Anyways, funny stuff. All right. So let's start. We will, let me get this set up here. All right. So I thought we were going to make it biodiversity and conservation. We are not. The extra credit homework assignment is on biodiversity and conservation. Don't worry too much about that. So it's extra credit, but yeah, we're not actually going to be able to do that. Okay, let me pull this over. Here we go. Okay. Let's share my screen. Okay. All right, we're going to be talking about community ecology now. Now, we've brought in a lot of information about community ecology because we've talked about distribution. We've talked about niche space in terms of where populations live, and the K limit of populations. And we've talked a lot about these different pieces, but this is going to be talking very specifically about exactly how species interact with one another. So we're going to finish up this is the last full lecture. Next Tuesday, we will be teaching, I will be teaching this lecture as well, but I'm just going to finish up the lecture. I'm not actually going to have any new lectures. It's their last topic. All right. So communities consist of complex and dynamic interactions among species. We talked about the biotic pieces, biotic interactions influencing where organisms live. And these organisms, they are, so these organisms could either affect each other beneficially, not at all, or detrimentally, okay? And this all builds into community structure. Now, Lab 13 that you just finished is basically about community structure of organisms. Okay, you talked about the Gorgonosa ecosystem and looked at food chains and food webs, and this all talks about consumer interactions. And we will get to consumers. Right now we're going to talk about more niches and how that builds community structure, okay? So we're going to talk about commensalism, competition, consumption, mutualism. This says, listen, explain the 3 methods of consumption. Don't stress too much about that. I think I only go into those briefly. Describe the role of abiotic factors and predatory. We will talk about the 2 types of mimicry. We mentioned them briefly, but I will go into them in more detail. Describe the role of abiotic factors and predation on community structures, and talk about keystone species. We will get into that next week. Additionally, primary and secondary succession, we're going to try to get to next week. And we already know why species is higher in the tropics than the poles. Okay, we talked about that a lot already. So again, a lot of these key into all the pieces that we've already talked about. Okay, this is the kind of the pure ecology, just species interaction. All right. So community is talks about all interacting living species within a defined area, okay? So we have the population is just a population of individuals. Community is multiple populations of multiple individuals, including all types of consumers up that chain that we talked about in lab, okay? And interactions among species affect fitness. The ability to thrive and produce viable and fertile offspring. Competition or predation can reduce fitness. Meanwhile, mutualism can improve fitness. So the goal of community ecology is to understand how to manage and preserve biodiversity and ecosystem function. Community ecologists often work with restoring ecosystems and trying to make sure that the ecosystems are functioning at their highest level. All right, so species interactions. Interactions between individuals of the same species are called intra-specific interactions, okay? So, intra. And we've already talked a lot about the different types of intra-specific interactions. We've talked about competition between males, sexual selection, and also competition between other individuals of the same species. So we have talked about that a bit. Interactions between individuals of different species are called interspecific interactions. Interspecific interactions are when 2 species are interacting in some way. It could be consumption, like in Lab 13. It could be talking about species as so these different species both trying to live in the same spot. Remember, that's the whole point of Darwin's selection, is that certain species will select to live in a place, and if there's competition, they may change their niche. Okay, so we're going to talk about niches. Species interactions in its habitat, how it interacts with both other species and the environment. It determines that species' niche. So that's the role of that species in its habitat. Each species is thought to have a separate and unique niche. The niche of a species is the sum of its use of abiotic and biotic resources in the environment. And so this is things we've talked about already. What determines the range? Well, it's the niche that determines the range of a species, because range includes biotic and abiotic interactions and all the biotic and abiotic resources a specific species needs. Certain species tolerate a certain temperature range, the size of branches on which it perches, the time of day it's active. Note these are all things that can identify species as well, okay? Note that niches, when one species comes over and different populations take up different niche space, then they can do that radial speciation we talked about, okay? And also the sizes and kinds of insect it eats. So two species cannot coexist permanently in an ecosystem if their niches are identical. I like to use an example of competition in business to talk about this, okay? So when I was younger, in high school, there was this cute little local coffee shop a few miles from my house. I would go there to hang out with friends in high school. And then a Starbucks opened across the street. Both of them were providing coffee. Well, Starbucks provides a very mainstream coffee, and well, they have a lot of resources. And so, what do you think happened to the small coffee shop? Anyone have any ideas? Small coffee shop across the street from Starbucks. What do you think happened to it? You'd think it would have gone out of business, right? Actually, what happened was that, well, it shifted its niche. So it did better in some ways, but one of the key things it did, the people who ran the shop understood that they couldn't compete with the coffee at Starbucks. So they added bookshelves of books, put games in, and they started offering ice cream and gelato. They changed their niche. They changed what customers were being attracted to them because they were unable to compete with the coffee side. They decided to go for atmosphere and decided to go for a different set of food. Now, this worked for about 10 years or so, and then they went out of business again. But it's sort of been a complicated time, right? But they were able to survive longer because they changed their niche and changed who they were catering to, okay? This is called competitive exclusion. So if their niches are identical, if that coffee shop had not changed to do other things, then they would have immediately gone extinct, been pushed out of business. So this is competitive exclusion that happens in businesses too, okay? Two different businesses moving side by side, unless one of them has a quirk, something different that distinguishes them, one of them is eventually going to go out of business, or both of them are just going to suffer. Even a slight advantage one species has over the other will eventually lead to local extinction of the inferior competitor. Again, eventually, the coffee shop that I went to in high school went out of business. But it took a while, and in large part, they were able to stay alive because they didn't have an identical niche. Now, they were a little bit similar, and similar enough that the coffee business was stolen a lot by that. Eventually, that business was pushed out. Again, similar species can coexist in a community if one or more significant differences in their niche arise through time. This is evolution, right? If one of them is able to develop a thicker or stronger beak and open a different set of seeds than the other one can, well, that's going to be the primary thing that they start doing, and they're going to start to differentiate themselves. And if one of them can make gelato and the other can't, well, the gelato is going to be the distinguishing thing. They're going to turn more into a gelato group instead of a coffee group, okay? I know. Look at me, I'm drinking Starbucks right now. You know, there's no local coffee shops near my house. I would totally go to one if there was. The best local coffee near me, let's see. There's a good one in Riverdale, Maryland, a 20-minute drive. There's a good one just past Crofton, a 20-minute drive. I have to really want good coffee. Sometimes I get Starbucks. So it's not that good in terms of its plain coffee. I don't actually like their beans. I've been getting some higher quality beans to grind on my own. Their espresso drinks are delicious, and I like their espresso drinks. Their plain coffee is boring and burnt. Okay, so let's talk about niches here. On a soccer team, the position and contributions of a player would be that player's niche. Okay? So, if you were to try out for a soccer team and you can only play goalie, you're a terrible defender, a terrible fullback, a terrible forward, what's going to happen if a better goalie planned to try out? You won't get the position, right? I grew up in a soccer family. My 4 of my younger siblings were on metro teams, and they travel all over California. And basically, either you get benched if there's a better goalie, or you don't make the team, because sometimes they're choosing. I mean, my sister Karen got chosen for a metro team based on like playing games in front of recruiters. And that's the thing, though, is that she was good at several different positions, and so she could switch between positions, and that made her desirable. A good goalie that's not good at anything else is actually less likely to be chosen, for one thing, but also, even if you're the best goalie, if someone else comes and they're a little bit better at goalie, even that little bit better can edge you out of the competition. Okay? Because you can only do one thing. So, a species' fundamental niche is the niche that the species could potentially occupy. Okay? So my sister, Karen, she was very good at soccer in high school. She since stopped playing it, but she was a soccer star in high school. And so her fundamental niche, she could play, she's very good as a good runner, okay? So she played fullback, halfback, and she was the forward full, okay? So forward center. She was good at running. Terrible defender. And didn't play goalie, okay? My sister Sheena played goalie. But the key here is that she actually normally played the fullback position, which you basically run all the way up and down the field a lot, okay? Because there were other people that were better at forwards than she was. And that's just how it is. She had a fundamental niche. She could have played any one of those. She could have played each one of those separately and played them well. But her realized niche was that fullback position, the position of running up and down the field and kind of being the go for all, okay? That's the niche that she actually occupied in that particular team, okay? So that's what I want you guys to get out of this, understanding that even if a coffee shop that's also a bookshop that's also a gelato shop will potentially lean towards making gelato all the time if someone else is better at books and coffee than they are. That's their realized niche, even though their fundamental niche includes coffee. Okay? So this is interspecific competition. Actual animal example. So this is seed size. One species eats seeds of a certain size range. They don't really eat small seeds. They don't eat the really big seeds. They eat these medium seeds. Okay? But let's say species 2 comes in. They eat really large seeds, and they eat some large medium seeds. That species 1 eats as well. So they are now competing for this size of seed. Species 2 is a better competitor for larger seeds. So what do you think is going to happen to species 1? Does species 1 go extinct? No. Species 1 changes its fundamental niche. They stop eating the seed. Instead, they focus on just eating these seeds, which they normally ate anyways, but now they're unable to eat this seed. And it narrows their niche. It's beneficial for both of them to stop competing for the same thing. Okay? Fundamental niches are broader than realized niches. Okay? So species 1 is a strong competitor, species 2 is a weak competitor. Even if species 2 could eat this range of seeds, eat this size of insect, occupy this different area. If a species that's a strong competitor is already there, they will narrow their niche and only consume and use resources in their realized niche and not take up that space. But recognize this also has to do with the presence of a strong competitor. Were you to take out this species of bird, species 1 goes extinct for some reason, species 2 would broaden its niche because it's able to occupy that space. It's just pushed out due to the other one. Let's take my sister, Karen. She normally played that fullback position, but every once in a while, the forward would be out of a game due to sickness or due to something else. She'd take over that space because she could. Because she had the skills to do the forward center. But she couldn't do it unless the other competitor was gone. Okay? If a strong competitor comes into an area with a weak competitor, and the weak competitor has no space outside of the strong competitor to leave. If that coffee shop has no ability to make gelato or do anything besides coffee, they specialize everything on just making coffee, and a stronger competitor comes in, they will be driven to extinction because they don't have any other way to go. They don't have new things to focus on. Unless they are able to change their niche and bring it way over here, then they will be outcompeted. Natural communities actually look different in different locations due to the niche suitability here, okay? So in wet areas, all right, we have Salix nigra, okay? This is the black willow tree. Black willows like their roots to be submerged in water. And they do really well in wet areas. As soon as it gets the tiniest bit dry, other species dominate. Okay, so they live right next to the water. As long as there's lots of water, they are more competitive than the elm. This is American elm, Ulmus americana. Okay. Elms live in wet areas too, but there's very few of them because the willows are so much better at competing in that environment. Take away a little water though, and suddenly elms are the primary species. Just a little bit away from the water, elms dominate. You go a little further away from the water though, and even though the elms could live in this mesic, semi-dry area, there is a type of elm that lives there. This sugar maple does so much better than them that it pushes them out. Even though they're capable of living there, the sugar maple is dominant because it's able to compete for more water than the elms can get. Without that extra water, drier soils will mean that even though they can live in drier soils, they can't compete for the water like the sugar maples can. You get a little drier though, and suddenly the oaks are the dominant ones. This is red oak and white oak. Okay, so this is in this area. The red oak and the white oak like the dry areas, and they're really good competitors in dry areas. Even though the sugar maple can live in this drier area, it's really outcompeted. Similarly, Ulmus rubra can live in these areas, but the oaks are the dominant species. That's because they're just better at competing in that area. And that's why we have these different communities filled with different organisms, because some of them compete better under certain stresses, and some of them compete worse. Perhaps you guys did a bunch better if there was math involved, because you like math. Math is a fun puzzle. Other people hate math. And they did the worst in ones where I test you on the math, and best in ones where I test you on memory instead. It's very different. You have skills. You have specific skills that help you to be specifically good. If you are competing against your fellow students, which you're not, okay, no competition here. Multiple people can get C's, B's, and A's, okay? I'm not going to exclude you. If everyone gets an A, everyone gets an A. But the key here is that if you were competing, then, well, the people who were better at math would have done better in one section of my class and be the highest. And people who were better at other topics would do better in different sections of my class. All right, so this is a animal setup now, okay? So the white-breasted nuthatch climbs down the trunk and looks for insects. The pileated woodpecker digs deeply in the wood to find large insects. The yellow-bellied sapsucker drills rows of holes and consumes sap and insects stuck in the sap. And the brown creeper climbs up the trunk looking for tiny insects. Do you think that these are the fundamental or realized niches of these bird species that all live in the same area? Anthony says realized. And it's true. The key here is that let's take this yellow-bellied sapsucker, okay? It could probably eat these larger grubs that the pileated woodpecker is eating. But it can't get to them. It drills and it pecks. It can't make it there, okay? So this is the issue here. It can get to these occasionally, but if the pileated woodpecker is there, it gets them before the yellow-bellied sapsucker can. Similarly, this bird walking down will get medium and larger insects that are on top and goes down. This one gets small, but it's probably only eating the small because by the time it gets up here, this one has grabbed all the medium and large. So it's focusing on the small because that's what it can get, and that's what this one doesn't eat. And it's focusing on going up because it gets the ones that are near the ground. So you can see that concept here. All right. When species interact, interactions affect the distribution and abundance of organisms. We've talked about this a lot already with ecology. Where do species live? How do you choose where to live? Okay. Also, coevolution. We talked about that with invasive species. It's a pattern of evolution where two species influence each other's adaptations. The outcome is dynamic and conditional based on environment and how much certain interactions influence their fitness. All right, we're going to talk about the 4 general types of species interactions. And this is going to tell you the benefits and downfalls of them, okay? We have commensalism is one of them. Plus 0. What do you think these symbols mean? There's 2 species interacting in a commensalism environment. There you go. Anthony has it. It's benefit here, and sometimes people say not. Basically nothing. Commensalism means that one individual is benefiting, and the other doesn't even know the other one exists. Okay, we'll talk about some of the examples for that one. Mutualism. So now that you know how this works, what does it mean for the mutualism? They both benefit. Yes, Angela. Okay? Mutualism. Plus, plus. Okay? When they're together, they're better. Competition. They both lose. It's a lose-lose interaction. We'll talk more about why it's lose-lose in a minute. And then consumption. Plus, minus. Think of it this way. When you eat a carrot, who's winning when you eat the carrot? One win. One's very negatively affected or killed. Okay? So that's consumption that's there. The consumption is one benefits. Either one dies or is largely injured. Okay? So why is competition minus though? So Anthony's asking, is consumption the same as parasitism? Consumption and parasitism. So parasitism is a type of consumption. Okay. So if a mosquito drinks your blood, it's bad for you. You get the minus. Plus for the mosquito. Okay. Parasitism is a type of consumption. There's also herbivory and carnivory. Okay. All right. So competition. We'll talk about competition right now, just to get you. Let's go back to the Starbucks and small coffee shop concept. So we think of Starbucks as being able to just take over areas and like kick out these small businesses. They don't necessarily try to kick them out, but obviously they're trying to get the business that would normally go there. This is good for their bottom line. Is it free for Starbucks to do that? If Starbucks goes into an area with 4 small coffee shops, is it easy for Starbucks to take over? Like, is it completely free? It takes no effort from Starbucks. Okay, Anthony and Dimitri, you said no. Well, why no? What does Starbucks have to do? Why are they winning? Why is it? They have to invest in their brand. They had to put more advertisements out. They likely are losing money to the other competitions, but they can wait it out. They have more money to sit and lose money for a little bit until the others go away. They can keep up the same level of quality no matter if they're heavily competed with. And it takes resources and effort to prevent, to continue to be active. Competition hurts both. Okay? Maybe they have to alter hours, or maybe they can hire more employees. Even though the other groups would have to cut hours. They're a stronger competitor. They have more ability to wait things out and to wait out things like a pandemic. They can shut down locations and not themselves be shut down. And that's but the thing is that it's not good for them. If a Starbucks moves into an area where has never been a coffee shop, it's the first time there's been a coffee shop in years in that area, they're probably going to do super well because people love coffee. And they don't have to do a lot of effort and don't have to put out a lot of advertisements in order to get the customers. They do if there's a competitor there. The competitor's pulling customers away. Until the competitor's gone, they are bleeding a little bit of potential money. Okay. So let's talk about a few of the different ones, and after we've introduced some of them, we're not going to go into consumption today because that's an interesting one, and we're going to save that for next week, okay? So commensalism. Commensalism occurs when one species benefits from another, which is not helped or harmed. Anyone think of a commensalism relationship? Again, 2 different species where one is helped and one is not harmed or helped at all. Maybe something where the organism doesn't realize they're helping someone. Anyone think of one? Aha, so the whales and fish that eat organisms off the whale, this actually a mutualism. The whales like that. They like that the fish are helping clean them. Cleaner fish and regular fish, that is actually a mutualistic thing where the whale allows the fish to eat it off because it makes the whale cleaner and the fish get a free meal. No, the whales are helped by that. So that wouldn't be commensalism. There you go. A tree providing shade. It costs nothing for the tree to provide the shade. A organism resting under a tree would benefit from the tree having nice shade, but it would not be harmed or helped by the organism that's getting the shade. But the shaded organism is happy. That's a good one. There is a whale one I'll talk about right now. So here, this whale has barnacles. There's barnacles all over the whale. Barnacles do really well if they are filter feeders. They like to go to areas with lots of plankton. If they just sit on the side of a wall, sometimes there's plankton there, sometimes there's not. But they like to attach to whales. If they attach to whales, then the whale who eats plankton will go to areas where there's lots of plankton. And the barnacles get a free meal. Whales are huge. These don't bother them. They barely even register they're there. It doesn't harm the whale. And it doesn't help the whale. They're just on the whale. And so this is a commensalism relationship. Sort of if your goatee was benefiting by you eating and then dropping stuff. That's weird. I don't want to censor your goatee. But yes, it probably affects them as much as having a goatee on their face. They're not actually thinking about it. Okay. We have a commensalistic relationship as well. What is our commensalistic relationship with? Well, do you know that there are creatures living on your eyebrows and in your eyelashes? Who knew this? In your eyebrows and on your eyelashes are microscopic mites. Almost everybody has them. You'll never see them. They do not cause irritation. They eat dead skin. And they're really good at holding on if you try to wash them off. Not everyone has them, but if you have them, you don't know. It doesn't hurt you. You can't see them. There's no unsightly reason to get rid of them. But the mite is benefiting, and you are unharmed. That is a commensalistic relationship. It's a gross one. You don't necessarily want bugs in your face, but there's mites everywhere, and you just don't notice them because they're so small. Another one is ivy growing up the sides of trees. They don't grow on the tree's leaves. The trunk is basically dead supporting matter here, okay? There's a little bit of live material in the bark, but the ivy doesn't harm that at all. The trees don't have nerve endings. They can't feel the ivy on them. And unless the ivy weighs down the branches or breaks branches, it's not going to harm the tree. Generally, ivy is not noticed by the tree at all. And the trees have much deeper roots than the ivy does. So they're completely consuming separate parts of the environment. And in no way will the ivy be stealing any nutrients or food from the tree. I like this one. So, these are army ants. Has anyone ever seen actual army ants? They would be in Florida, South Texas, or the Caribbean. So I spent a couple of months in college living in Belize. Belize has a lot of ants, many different types. The fire ants were the main ones. Fire ants are terrible and awful and bitey. These are not fire ants, but they do pack a nasty bite. I got bitten by a army ant once. Very unpleasant. Each one packs a powerful punch, but they're big. They're like that big, okay? So, army ants, they march through the forest. March. You can literally hear them. You can hear them moving in the forest. It's like an oncoming cavalry. Insects can hear them too. And if they come across an insect, they swarm and devour it. So insects don't like to be there. As they march through the forest, the insects that hear them coming will run. Well, the antbird has taken advantage of this. They follow high above so the ants don't get them, and watch the army ants. Once an insect escapes from the army ants, it goes straight into the belly of the ant bird. Again, insects are really good at hiding, but if they run, they're easy to see. And so the ant bird takes advantage of this and catches all those hidden insects and lets the ants do the job for it. Now, normally, these ants don't notice it at all. This does not impact them because that insect would have escaped. Aha! Jesse thinks that he did see it. They are active all the time, okay? There are some really big ants. They're really like this big. They're huge. Very unpleasant. Yes, they line up in a long trail, and they will bite ferociously if you step in them. My story is that one time, we were in these cabins, the place I stayed at, and so if you're in the cabin and you see army ants, it'll be like you'll see one army ant, you'll see a couple army ants, you'll see 20 army ants, and then it's time to leave. If you stay in there, well, you won't stay in there for long because they'll start biting you. But it's actually not too bad. You leave your room for a couple hours, you let them do their thing, you come back in, they've eaten all the spiders, all the annoying cicadas and crickets, and there's a lot of bugs and bees. Everything that was like hiding in the corners, and all the dust and food scraps on the ground, well, they cleaned your room. It's nice. They're very fastidious, and they do not leave behind poop or anything. But you don't want to be in there while they're doing it. Yes, they're like a maid brigade. Again, you don't want to be in there while they're doing it. They eat anything in their path, and they can't really eat you unless literally you were... I suppose the only way army ants could be dangerous if you were literally passed out drunk in the path of an army ant. Probably not good. But they couldn't eat you, but they would bite you, and they're very unpleasant when they bite. When I was in Belize, we would only be nice. I would actively avoid every ant except for, I get so annoyed at the ants. Sometimes I would like mess up their trails just to be mean because I hated how they would bite me. I took care of the leafcutter ants. They never bit me. Leafcutter ants were nice. I always tried to help them out or to gently shove them off of a pathway they might get squished on because I wanted them to survive. All right, we'll move on from ants. Again, there's a lot of different ones that plants have as well. Epiphytes, which also live in the rainforest, are plants that live on other plants. They grow on tree branches. They get they are held up to the light by the host plant. The host is not harmed. If the tree and epiphytes start fighting for access to sunlight, then they can become parasitic and harming the tree in some way, okay? Their mistletoe is an epiphyte, but can become parasitic and harm the tree if there's too much mistletoe on the tree. All right. Next, we're going to talk about mutualism. It involves a win-win interaction with rewards for both individuals that participate, okay? So this is a ant, and it's hanging out with some aphids. It's not eating the aphid. Does anyone know what this ant is doing to the aphid? That aphid is safe. What is the ant doing, though? Yeah, these are ant farmers. Ants literally are aphid farmers in the sense they treat them like cows. They come and they start taking care of a group of aphids that's on a plant. They protect the aphids from predators like ladybugs, and in return, the aphids, when they are stroked by the ant, will release a bead of sweet liquid. Ants do not have piercing, sucking mouth parts that can get into the plant and pull out the sweet juices. So the aphids do it for them. The price of the survival of the aphids is giving up some of their food, but it means they're not eaten, and the ants will ferociously attack anybody who comes near. I've had this trouble in my garden plants before. You have a place that's swarmed by aphids, but also by ants, because the ants are protecting them. The best way to get rid of them, actually, in a kind way, is to get rid of the ants. Basically, you can put a sort of an ant barrier around, and then you let the ladybugs eat them. It actually works reasonably well. If you encourage the ladybugs to be in your garden, then your aphid problem is much lower, but you have to keep the ants out. Another well-known mutualism is butterflies and flowers. Flowers are pollinated by the butterflies, and the butterflies get sweet nectar in return, and the plants get pollinated, and they both have a benefit. Mutualisms take a lot of different forms, but all of them involve a partnership in which both species gain fitness advantages from the interaction. That they grow better and do better when they're together. Both of them benefit from being near the other one. Okay, this is a form of symbiosis called lichen. It's a fungus and an algae that grow. The algae grows inside the fungus. Algae does photosynthesis, and the fungus is a heterotroph and eats dead things. And they both share food, and they do better in harsh environments than they would on their own. I spoke of this before. This is something. So this is a crocodile, and there's a little bird in his mouth. Why isn't the crocodile eating the bird? Why is that bird just hanging out? It's cleaning his teeth. Would you eat your toothbrush? So the idea is that, the bird is his dentist, basically. If by eating your toothbrush it meant that you could no longer brush your teeth until you had to wait for another toothbrush to come along, then maybe you wouldn't eat your toothbrush, right? Toothbrush giving you a benefit by cleaning out your teeth, and the bird itself is getting food. And so it's a really nice mutualism. And so if your toothbrush tasted good, now let's imagine your toothbrush tastes good, but it costs a lot of money. So if you eat your toothbrush, you have to save up money to get a new one. You might not eat it. Maybe every once in a while you'd eat your toothbrush, but then you'd regret it and you'd have to go save up money for another toothbrush. This is sort of, think of the toothbrushes as expensive. If the crocodile is a known toothbrush eater, maybe no one's going to go clean its teeth, right? Do humans share any mutualistic relationships with other species? Note, cows actually don't count because we've bred them to do this. Anthony has an idea. Bacteria in our stomach. Yes, bacteria in our stomach. Gut flora. Cats and dogs are an interesting one. So technically, yes. Dogs originally, dogs and cats were taken in as pets because they were useful to us. My cat lays around lazily and snuggles with me in front of the TV. I don't know that I get the snuggles, but I'm not sure. It's a little bit complicated with animals that we've domesticated, right? Sort of, we did that on purpose. But a natural mutualism. Dogs and humans were the first natural mutualism, actually, because dogs chose to stay with human groups and help them hunt. Humans would share their hunt and help the dogs hunt. This is a mutualism of sorts, and it morphed into now our relationship with dogs today. Similar with cats. Cats are a little bit more complicated, though. They don't help us hunt quite as much. So gut flora is a major one, a symbiosis that we have with other organisms. So who here has been told to take a probiotic, basically bacteria? Who's been told to take a probiotic by their doctor Anyone ever had their doctor recommend a probiotic? No? Angela, why did they recommend a probiotic? What was the reasoning here? Do you remember why? So I'm going to say that when you go on antibiotics, well, often it is more recommended by, say, your gynecologist. The key here is that bacteria and yeast and a specific kind of nasty bacteria called C. diff live in our body in harmony. Probiotics do the opposite of antibiotics. Opposite in the way. If you take antibiotics, often they're broad spectrum and they kill off everything, including your gut bacteria. This is bad. If your gut bacteria and the rest of the bacteria in your body are killed off, then the bad bacteria that's resistant, a bacteria called C. diff, and yeast, they have had their competitors removed, and they will take over and possibly give you a nasty gut infection, or, especially for the ladies, a nasty yeast infection, okay? Take probiotics after you have antibiotics. The antibiotics will kill off the bad bacteria, but you got to replace them where you need them in your gut. You got to keep the balance of microbes inside of you, otherwise the bad ones take over. A lot of mutualists have co-evolved in order to help each other, okay? Yes, there's probiotics in yogurt. Kombucha is another source of good bacteria. And yogurt, again, it's a culture. Sauerkraut, only if you get the non-pasteurized sauerkraut. A lot of things have good bacteria in them. It's okay to eat good bacteria. It's okay to eat gut bacteria. There are some bacteria you shouldn't eat, but there are good bacteria. So, humans and gut bacteria have evolved together to humans get the benefit of being able to digest things better. The gut bacteria get protection and the ability to a safe place with lots of food to live, okay? And they can't live outside of our gut, and not well at least. And you can see how some of this type of thing is only pollinated by bats. Look at this interesting thing. Again, it has these curved anthers that have the pollen on them. And when the bat goes in to lick up that delicious nectar at the bottom, the pollen gets on its forehead. Then it'll go over to another plant and it'll put the pollen on a different forehead. At a different plant and pick up new pollen. It's beneficial to have this co-evolving relationship. Again, this is different than altruism. One of them is not giving up its, even though it's paying a little bit of money, effort, is still getting fitness benefits. And it does better with the mutualist than it does without. It's not actually harming itself. Altruism was when you harm or give away your resources with nothing in return or a higher risk. Mutualists are not trying to be nice, okay? The bat stole nectar. It accidentally pollinated. The plants that attracted bats reproduce more. And these are inherently selfish. In the sense that the mutualists are trying to get something, and the other mutualist is trying to get something, and it just so happens that they do better if they work together, but they're not thinking, oh, I should work together, this is a nice thing to do. No, they're thinking, I need to get food. This plant has food, and this plant says, the plant that survives better has a way to put pollen on the one that's pollinated it. Some species will cheat on their mutualisms, and this is how you know it's a selfish interaction, because cheating on their mutualisms is common. Some plants have showy, beautiful flowers. A butterfly comes over, lands on it, puts its little proboscis in, but there's no nectar. It is tricked Remember, deceit here. Deceit's the common way that species interact. They produce no nectar reward for the pollinators, but they still get to give their pollen to them. Some pollinators are nectar robbers. Instead of going the way that the plant has designed through this narrow opening, they go down to the base of the plant and they suck out the nectar, but do not pollinate in return. And that hurts the plant. This is a type of consumption now instead. And in that case, the plus-plus interaction will become a plus-minus. All right, last piece I'll talk about is just competition. It goes through a few of the pieces that we already went through with niche bits here, okay? Individuals compete for limited resources. If individuals of the same species are competing for the resources or mates, okay, sexual competition happens. That's interest-specific within the same species. We're mostly talking about interspecific when we talk about competition, especially competition that causes differentiation and speciation, okay? Evolution, really. Competition is lose-lose, okay? And so you can see this here. If they're grown separately, these two different parameciums, we have Aurelia and Caudatum. Aurelia grows like this, Caudatum grows like this. Now, Aurelia is a better competitor. If you grow them together, Aurelia does better, and Caudatum eventually is forced to extinction. But look at the curve of the Aurelia. While Caudatum is still high, it doesn't go up as fast, and it takes longer to get to that high level, and that high level is only obtained after the Caudatum is gone. Because competition is lose-lose. They both have to give up resources to live together. And until this one is extinct, this one is harmed. This is a picture of mine, actually. I took a picture of one of the most competitive plants I saw in the rainforest of Belize. This is called a strangler fig. It does what it says. There is an intense amount of competition for light in the rainforest. This strangler fig, what it does is it puts... it starts as a vine, okay, and it puts roots down all around the base of the tree. It climbs up and starts covering the tree. It begins to steal nutrients from the base of the tree, and as it climbs up, it starts stealing light, spaces of light from that tree. Eventually covers it all over. It steals nutrients and water from the tree until that tree dies and its leaves go away. Then the strangler fig stands there, surrounding a dead, empty tree section, becomes the tree itself. It is weird and extremely competitive. It's cutthroat in the rainforest, I tell you. The new space provides water and nutrients and sunlight to the strangler fig. It slowly covers the old tree, and sometimes you'll actually see the strangler fig standing with nothing in the middle because the old tree is rotted away. Again, a very intense form of competition in the rainforest. Symmetric competition is a roughly equal decrease in fitness for each species. They have the same kind of area overlap in terms of their niche. Asymmetric competition, when one species suffers a greater fitness decline, basically their fundamental niche becomes much smaller instead of a little bit smaller. And the outcome of whether or not one species survives or one species becomes dominant or something like that depends on the amount of overlap. There's strong natural selection, though, to avoid competition. As I mentioned, that old coffee shop was avoiding competition by doing more gelato. They weren't trying to compete with Starbucks. The idea is that they had to differentiate themselves or die. So there's strong natural selection to avoid it. So the outcome is an evolutionary change in traits, directional selection, away from the point of competition. Remember, directional selection is moving it one way or moving it the other way. It can be caused by competition by a neighboring species. Individuals aren't deciding to change. It means that the ones that have more overlap die out and do less well than those that reduce the competition. And eventually the competition is reduced and evolution happens to move away from competitive space. Strong natural selection on both species to avoid competition leads to character displacement. This is a change in traits in populations over time that reduces the amount of niche overlap. Okay? So this is called niche differentiation. So I'll show you how this works. See, there you go. The blue macaws are competing with red macaws for what's left of macadamia trees. I've never seen Rio. I was annoyed by the advertisements, so I never watched it. But yes, it's a similar concept here. So what's happening is that species 1 and species 2, okay? Species 1 has high fitness over here and high fitness over here. Let's say this is size of insect, okay? So the ones that are eating more of this in-between ones in species 1 and species 2 have the lowest fitness, and they start to die off. The ones that are doing better live and start replacing the competition. Same with this one. So they both move away from the competitive space. Species 2 starts eating larger insects. Species 1 starts eating smaller insects. And soon those middle insects are no longer eaten by those species. Perhaps could be taken up by a different species that only eats middle insects. But now you have species 1 and species 2. They're completely different. And evolution has happened because the selection of a trait. The ones in the middle here are competing too much. And this isn't causing speciation necessarily unless it's happening in a single species. If this is intra-specific competition and this disruptive selection happens, so you have two high points, eventually that low point will get lower and lower, and now you have two species. Okay? It's a similar concept with the two species originally competing with each other. They'll move away from it because why stay in an area where you're competed with? Find your own niche and only stick with that. So Galapagos finches are a great example of this. They're well known for having a diversity of beak shapes, and these different shapes allow birds to specialize in particular food types, cracking large seeds, eating a large amount of small seeds. So in this area, okay, this it originally was just this species, G. fortis, okay, Galapagos fortis, and this is a finch, okay, and this is the size of its beak. Another, so this is in one location. So we see that without any competition, this one has this shape of beak. If it's in competition, though, on Santa Cruz Island with this fuliginosa gets this size of beak, which takes over some of this niche space. And the ones that survive better have bigger beaks. So G. fortis has directional selection away from the point of competition, the beak part of eating a certain type of food, and moves away from it. So that's called a character displacement. All right, that's all I have. But I am going to be posting online today a small activity. Okay, it's a worksheet that asks you about intra and inter-specific competition, how niche specialization works, and a little bit about mutualism and competition. Okay, and you'll just explain that. It's really simple and really fast, and hopefully you guys will be able to fill it out really fast. Okay. Actually, I might switch this. It's a multiple choice. I might just make you a quick quiz. Okay. The quiz doesn't have to be completed until next week. And even though you only have one chance at it, you can submit it anytime this week. It'll only take you about 5 minutes to do, I'm assuming. I usually take about 5 to 10 minutes on it in class, okay? But that might be easier for me because then I won't have to grade it. So that's all for class. If you guys have if you guys have not gotten your your rough draft feedback yet, I'm working on it. I have one more group that I'm giving edits to. use those edits and that information that I've given you in order to work on your papers more. Take time off on Thanksgiving to spend time with whatever small families you can get together. My mom and dad are driving to come see us. We've both been careful. My husband and I got a COVID test that was negative, so we are trying to be as cautious as possible and be sure that everyone is safe. But I know a lot of people can't travel or are choosing not to because it's too far, or to reduce actual exposure, okay? Be cautious this Thanksgiving, but please do spend it with at least a small amount of family, and at least virtually. So don't work on it then, but you will have the feedback today, and use that feedback to improve your writing space. Also, I do have, let me show that to you. I do have, where did I put it? Okay. I'm going to show this to everybody real quick. All right, I want to make sure everyone saw this. I posted an example lab report. This is for last semester when they actually did an experiment in lab. And so obviously we couldn't do that this year. It was a field experiment, but the segments are the same. Okay, writing the paper is the same thing. You have your introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Okay? Please look over this and see how they did it. Note how they did their citations. This is all in APA format. You should have author year as an in-text citation, no footnotes, and then a full reference page of all the references organized in APA format. Okay? I have the guidelines here. Okay? Read the guidelines. Make sure you understand what you're doing. I do want, even though I asked for a list of the materials you use, please do write your methods in paragraph form, okay? I saw several bulleted methods and I prefer paragraph, okay? And then additionally, your discussion is not saying, well, we didn't prove our hypothesis at the end. No. You want to talk about why it is you didn't prove your hypothesis, whether or not your hypothesis was even correct. Let's compare it to other studies. Let's talk about how we can improve this. Let's talk about why doing this kind of experiment is important for science. Make sure you don't slack on the discussion, okay? It should not be one paragraph long. It should be at least 1 page long, okay? All right, that's all I have for this week. Everyone have a good holiday. I will see you back next week. I will post that short little quiz on what we just talked about. And that's going to be, your class activity is going to be a short quiz, okay? I'll post it and give you guys an announcement about it, okay? It'll be posted later this afternoon. Have a good break, everyone. And again, be safe. Don't congregate in very large groups. Plan who you're going to spend time with and take precautions. I don't want to watch Rio 2. But I'll read the synopsis. Then I can use it as an example even if I've never watched it. I don't know, unless my 4-year-old wants to watch it. I don't think I'm going to end up watching it. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great week, and I will see you back on Tuesday. We are having one more class about community ecology and consumption on Tuesday. Okay. Everyone have a great holiday.